Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Tommy, or maybe I'm better known as the 5 Fast Facts guy. However you got here, I'm glad you did, and I hope you're up for a quick little story. It's about 2 bands that I idolized as a kid, and I still love their music as an old fucker. And the story everybody, including me, had wrong for so long, that Vince Neil was behind the wheel the night Rick Allen lost his arm. It gets repeated constantly, online and in conversations, in rock history retellings. It sounds dramatic, it sounds tragic, and honestly, it sounds exactly like something out of the 1980s rock and roll excess. But it's not true, not even close. And the real story is actually more complicated than the myth ever needed to be. To understand how this happened, you gotta go back to the 1980s, the time when rock and roll music wasn't just popular, it was dangerous in a very real public way. Bands weren't just breaking through, they were exploding into culture. Money, fame, alcohol, chaos, bitches, touring nonstop, everything was amplified. And 2 bands that sat right in the middle of that storm, Def Leppard and Mötley Crüe. You remember, 2 different paths, 2 rising forces, and 2 tragedies that would end up distorted together in one long-standing myth. It all started on December 8th of 1984. Vince Neil had been drinking heavily earlier that night and at a party in California. Later, he got in his car. In the passenger seat was Razzle, the drummer from Hanoi Rocks. What followed would become one of the most infamous crashes in rock history. Neil lost control of the vehicle, it crossed into oncoming traffic, and it collided with another car. Razzle, boom, dead instantly. The 2 other people in the other vehicle, seriously injured. Neil survived the crash, but what happened after that night, it didn't stay in the moment. It followed him legally, personally, and publicly for the rest of his frickin' life. It became one of those stories that defined an era of excess and consequence. And then just weeks later, something else happened on New Year's Eve, 1984. In England, Rick Allen was driving his Corvette near Sheffield. He was young and successful at the peak of his career with Def Leppard. But in a split second of speed and loss of control, everything changed. While attempting to pass another vehicle in a narrow road, Allen lost control of his car. It slammed into a wall and it flipped. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He was thrown from the vehicle, and in that violent chaos of the crash, his left arm was severed. He survived, but for a drummer, that damage wasn't just physical, it threatened everything. Doctors tried to save the arm, but complications forced an amputation. And overnight, one of rock's fastest rising musicians was facing a future that looked almost impossible. And here's where the story starts to bend, because these 2 crashes are completely unrelated. Different countries, different nights, different circumstances, different people. But they happened close enough together within the same era and the same cultural moment that memory started to blur them. And that blur is where the myth was born. There was no internet back then. There was no Google, no instant fact-checking. Information didn't travel cleanly. It traveled through people, word of mouth, through magazines, through radio shows, through conversations at record stores, bars, concerts. And in that environment, stories didn't stay precise for very long. They evolved, and sometimes they simplified themselves into something easier to remember. So over time, pieces of both stories started getting fused together. A crash, a drummer, a band from the same era, alcohol, rock and roll excess. And the brain starts doing what it naturally does. It fills in the missing details. And one name already tied to a famous crash from the same era starts getting attached to the wrong story, and that's Vince Neil. And just like that, the myth forms. Not through one mistake, but through repetition. But the truth is simpler, heavier at the same time. Vince Neil's crash was its own tragedy, a night that took a life and permanently altered others. And Rick Allen's crash was its own separate moment, one that forced him to rebuild his entire life and career from the ground up. 2 different stories, 2 different consequences, and 2 completely different moments in rock history, and yet the myth persists. Because it fits too neatly. It feels like it belongs in that era. Excess, speed, recklessness, consequences. It's almost too perfect not to believe. But that's exactly why it spread. And maybe that's the real lesson buried underneath all of this. Not just about rock history, but about memory itself. Because sometimes the stories that feel the most right aren't the ones that are true. They're just the ones that survive being repeated the most. Rick Allen would go on to do something almost unthinkable. He didn't disappear, he didn't quit. He rebuilt his entire drumming style around what he had left. And then he came back to music, not just a survivor, but a defining part of Def Leppard's identity moving forward. And Vince Neil, he would carry the weight of that night forever. Not as a myth, but as something real. Something that actually happened. Two separate tragedies, two separate lives, two separate paths connected only by time. Anyway, that's what I felt like I needed to say. Mainly because up till about a week ago, I had been telling people Rick Allen lost his arm because Vince Neil was all fucked up. And somebody died too, some other guy was in the car. I decided to Google it and try and figure out who the guy that died was. And oops, I'd been telling a bullshit story for God knows how long. So to all the people that I informed, oops, sorry about that, it's my bad. And for anybody else that wasn't clear on that subject, there, now you have the gospel. And now I love to kick it and tell rock stories. If you have an idea for a story or some input on this one, please get up in those comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, man, get in the circle and let's hang out. Subscribing is the only way that you'll get jammed up every time a new story drops. Oh, and one last thing. If you thought this was a cool way to spend, I don't know, about 10 minutes, give me a like. Till next time, take it easy, everyone. See ya.